It starts in the quiet moments, the electric brush of a coworker's hand passing files, the low timbre of a friend's laugh over wine, the way they tilt their head as if listening to the unspoken words humming beneath your skin. You're committed, you're loyal, yet here you are, composing sonnets in the secret theater of your mind, casting outsiders in roles your partner hasn't auditioned for. Why? Why does the heart, sworn to one, serenade shadows? Carl Jung, cartographer of the subconscious, would have named this betrayal projection, the act of grafting strangers onto the scaffolding of our unlived lives. He understood that monogamy isn't threatened by bodies, but by ghosts, the specters of who we might have been, the partners we wish we'd chosen, the selves we've buried to keep the peace. When we fantasize about others mid-relationship, we're not craving them. We're conducting seances for the parts of ourselves we've entombed. Let's autopsy the hunger. A wife lingers on her college friend's Instagram, his trek through Patagonia, his poetry quotes, his untamed beard. In her mind, he's not a person but a symbol, freedom from mortgages and pediatrician appointments. A husband replays a conversation with his gym trainer, her boldness, her irreverence casting her as the antidote to his wife's predictable warmth. Neither wants the person, both crave the archetype, the anima, the animus, the shadow. This isn't lust, it's necromancy. Jung warned that fantasies are never about the other. They're hieroglyphs of our disowned selves. That coworker you've eroticized, his confidence mirrors your atrophied ambition. The barista whose aura haunts your commute, her whimsy reflects the artist you euthanized at adulthood's altar. The fantasy isn't a threat to your relationship, it's a flare gun shot by your soul, signaling casualties within. Modern love's cruel irony, we demand partners be both safe harbor and uncharted waters, then crucify them when they can't split the atom. Jungian theory exposes the trap the more we force our partner to embody all archetypes, lover, hero, caregiver, muse, the more we starve. So the psyche outsources. The stranger becomes the blank screen where we screen our dissatisfaction with our choices, our compromises, the slow erosion of our what-ifs. But here's the serpent in this Eden. Fantasizing others doesn't expand your world, it shrinks it. Every mental dalliance with the neighbor, the ex, the fictional character, drains vitality from the real relationship. Jung called this psychic adultery, not because you've touched, but because you've withdrawn. You're building a secret cathedral to someone's potential while letting the shared garden of your actual love wither. The shadow grips tighter here. Those we lust for externally often personify traits we've exiled in our partners and ourselves. The dutiful wife obsesses over a musician not because she wants him, but because she's silenced her own wildness to be the good mother. The husband daydreaming about a CEO's ruthlessness isn't craving her. He's disowned his own power to avoid outshining his fragile father. Our fantasies are not indictments of our partners, but confessions of self-betrayal. And here's where it festers. By projecting our shadows onto strangers, we weaponize the unreal against the real. The wife comparing her husband to her boss's charisma doesn't see either. Clearly, she's too busy numbing her own charisma's hunger. The man scripting imaginary conversations with a more empathetic woman starves his partner of the very empathy he refuses to give. Fantasies become psychic poison, distorting reality, paralyzing growth, breeding resentment in sterile soil. Technology's gasoline on this fire. Dating apps, Instagram stories, AA companions all offer infinite projections. The ex's curated rebirth, the influencer's faux intimacy, the ChatGPT confidant who understands each a siren song luring us from the hard, holy work of loving actual humans. Jung's warning echoes. A culture addicted to avatars breeds souls allergic to skin. But the true danger? Fantasies fossilize you. Each mental escapade to an imaginary lover's arms is a brick in the wall between you and your partner's humanity. The wife who mentally rewrites her husband into the stoic hero of her novels stops seeing him, the man who fears failure, who sings off-key, who needs her. The husband daydreaming of a submissive lover erases his wife's complexity, her fire, her fears, her right to be more than his projection. But what if the fantasy isn't about them at all? What if it's a Trojan horse smuggling a far darker truth that you've ceased to see yourself? Jungian analyst Robert Johnson called this psychic incest, the act of turning strangers into mirrors for the parts of your soul you've disowned, while your actual relationships starve in the drought of your self-abandonment. The real betrayal isn't the fantasy, it's the slow suicide of your authenticity. Consider the woman who fantasizes about her husband's best friend, not for his muscles or charm, but for the way he listens. She's not craving an affair, she's hemorrhaging from her own unheard voice. The friend becomes her projected wounded healer, an archetype she's exiled to preserve her role as the family's emotional janitor. Meanwhile, her husband, the real man snoring beside her, isn't the villain. He's a fellow prisoner in her silent theater of self-erasure, or the man who replays his secretary's laugh like a forbidden psalm. It's not her humor he craves, it's his own strangled joy, sacrificed at the altar of corporate masculinity. Every mental reel of her tossing her hair is a funeral for the class clown he buried to become a serious man. His marriage isn't crumbling from lust, it's asphyxiating under the weight of his unmourned selves. Here's where it claws deeper. These fantasies aren't passive, they're rituals. Each time you mentally undress the barista, you're not just objectifying her, you're consecrating a shrine to your own arrested development. Jung saw this as archetypal possession the moment a fantasy hijacks your psyche, turning you into a puppet for ancient patterns. The man daydreaming of a mistress isn't a cad, he's a marionette dancing to Hades' tune, reenacting the myth of Persephone's abduction because he lacks the courage to face his own underworld. Modern neuroscience sharpens the blade. fMRI scans reveal that fantasizing activates the same brain regions as heroin use the nucleus. Accumbens floods with dopamine. The prefrontal cortex goes dark. You're not just imagining an affair, you're chemically lobotomizing yourself. The more you indulge, the more you rewire your brain to prefer illusions over messy, magnificent reality. Your partner's touch becomes a downgrade, a scratchy VHS, compared to the 4K porn of your mind. But here's the twist that chills. Fantasies metastasize because they're unshared. The wife who secretly imagines her yoga instructor's hands on her hips isn't turned on by him, she's electrified by the taboo of her own hunger. The moment she confesses it to her husband, the fantasy crumbles not from shame, but from oxygen. Secrets are the kerosene of eroticism. Intimacy is the fire extinguisher. Jungian analyst Esther Harding unveils the paradox. The most dangerous fantasies are those we believe we're not having. The CEO who innocently mentors his protege, the wife who platonically cuddles her male friend. These aren't affections. They're enactments, fantasies dressed in daylight clothes, feeding on plausible deniability. The real threat isn't the midnight daydream, it's the 3 p.m. text that could be innocent, if you didn't need it to be. Historically, this is Dionysus versus Apollo, the eternal war between wild truth and sterile order. Your fantasies are Dionysian riots, chaotic, blood-hot, screaming for the parts of life you've sanitized. But repression isn't the answer. That's Apollo's trap. Jung's solution, sacred integration. The CEO must channel his mentorship lust into reigniting passion for his wife's mind, not her body. The cuddling wife must confront why her marriage feels too fragile for such honesty. But here's the trap door. Fantasies thrive on unanswerability. The stranger's smile is erotic because it could mean everything or nothing. The moment you ask, "What do you want from me?" the spell breaks. That's why we prefer fantasies to flirting. They let us savor the question while avoiding the answer's blade. Let's dissect the forbidden. The woman who fantasizes about being dominated isn't broken. She's parched for surrender in a life of relentless control. The man who imagines cuckolding scenarios isn't a pervert. He's starving for permission to be vulnerable. Even the darkest fantasies aren't pathologies. They're hieroglyphs of disowned needs. The catch? Until you decode them, they'll puppet you. Technology's role here is diabolical. Instagram's close friends feature, Telegram's self-destructing messages, these aren't tools. They're fantasy incubators. The man sending memes to a coworker's private story isn't cheating. He's curating a parallel universe where he's still desirable. The woman liking her ex's posts at 2 a.m. isn't nostalgic. She's resurrecting a ghost self who hadn't yet settled. Each click is a witchcraft, summoning altars to roads not taken. But the true horror? We've weaponized fantasy as a substitute for courage. The husband who daydreams about divorce isn't envisioning freedom, he's rehearsing cowardice. The wife who imagines her lover's death isn't morbid. She's avoiding the confrontation that could resurrect her marriage. Even our nightmares are fantasies, distractions from the waking hell we refuse to face. Jungian analyst James Hollis chills. Most people don't want their lives to change. They want their lives to appear to change while remaining the same. Fantasies are the ultimate accomplice. They let us feel revolution while keeping our chains polished. But here's the barbed truth. Some fantasies must be lived, then released. The woman who obsessed over her ex's potential had to message him, only to discover he'd become a conspiracy theorist. The man who romanticized his college girlfriend met her and fled from her bitterness. These aren't failures, they're exorcisms. The most dangerous fantasy isn't about others, it's about yourself. The belief that you're the noble victim, that your partner is the jailer, that happiness awaits in someone else's skin. Jung's harrowing truth: you are both prisoner and warden. The affair you crave isn't with a person, it's with the self you abandoned to build this life. Why can't we stop? Because fantasies are capitalism for the soul, promising maximum returns with zero risk. They let you taste the affair's champagne without the hangover, flirt with rebellion without torching your life. But Jung's clarity stings. What you resist persists. The more you indulge these mental affairs, the more you hemorrhage authenticity. You're not cheating with a person, you're cheating on yourself. The solution isn't purging fantasies, but decrypting them. Next time someone not your partner hijacks your psyche, ask, what buried self does this fantasy resurrect? What shadow trait does this person mirror? What marriage to my own lies am I defending? For men, that free-spirited artist you've apotheosized, she's not your salvation from responsibility. Your longing is a cry to resurrect the rebel you abandoned at the cubicle's altar. For women, the brooding stranger you've cast as your emotional savior, he's not here to validate your depth. Your fixation is a demand to honor your depth, to stop outsourcing your self-worth to any man's gaze. This is Jungian alchemy, transmuting relational fantasies into self-revelation. It starts by admitting the knife twist truth: your yearnings aren't about them, they're about you. The parts of you that married too young, that still wonder, that rage against the shrinking of your world. But there's a venomous twist. Some fantasies aren't about longing, they're about self-punishment. The faithful partner fixated on taboo figures, the devoted spouse imagining humiliating scenarios, these aren't mere lust. They're shadow mutinies. The psyche's sick ballet, constructing fantasies that guarantee shame, thus reinforcing the cage of goodness. The fantasy isn't the sin, the self-flagellation after is. Jung's antidote? Integration. The saint must embrace their sinner, the rebel must wed their diplomat. No partner can mirror all your archetypes, nor should they. The goal isn't to find someone who completes you, but to become someone who contains multitudes. Modern relationships crumble under this weight. We demand our partners be both anchor and sail, then vilify them as jailers when we feel stagnant. But Jungian wisdom whispers, Stagnation isn't your partner's fault, it's your soul's protest against self-abandonment. That magnetic stranger, they're not your escape route, they're your mirror. Historically, we've misread this tension. Tristan and Isolde, Lancelot and Guinevere, these aren't romances, they're cautionary tales. The love potion, the forbidden glance, the stolen kiss, all metaphors for projection's delirium. Jung knew the third party in any affair isn't a person, it's the unlived life. So how to break free? Qato 1. Shadow dialogues. When fantasies flare, write letters between your perfect stranger and your partner. Discover what each represents, often rival fragments of your psyche. 2. Archetype audits. List the traits you project onto outsiders. Now, cultivate those traits within your relationship's bounds. Yearning for passion, initiate it. Craving depth, dive. 3. Reality reckoning. If a fantasy grips you, test it. Have coffee with the colleague, DM the ex, watch the projection shatter, leaving only human ash. Jung warned that unexamined fantasies become psychic parasites, but once interrogated, they become maps. The wife who admits her boss fantasies mirror her own stifled leadership doesn't cheat. She launches the business she's deferred. The husband who sees his gym crush as a mirror of his cage vitality doesn't stray. He revives his dormant passions. Consider this: the strangers haunting your imagination are equally haunted. The friend's husband you've romanticized, he's daydreaming about his college roommate's freedom. The roommate, she's fantasizing about your curated Instagram piece. It's a daisy chain of delusion, each person chasing phantoms while their real love suffocates. Halting this demands brutal presence. When fantasies beckon, ground. Feel your partner's calloused hand, their sleep-mussed hair, their morning breath. Ask, what here is alive, but ignored? What here could blaze if fed? Jungian analyst Marion Woodman wrote, "We turn to strangers when we're estranged from ourselves." Your fantasies aren't about connection, they're about resurrection. The stranger's allure isn't a call to abandon your partner, but to resurrect the selves you've buried to keep the love alive. This isn't about shaming desire, it's about dignifying it. Lust is natural, but when it fixates on outsiders, it's a smoke signal your inner world's on fire. The man who sees his sister-in-law as a muse doesn't need an affair, he needs to write the novel burning his ribs. The woman parsing her neighbor's kindness as romance must confront her own starved need for community. But here's the barbed truth: your partner is also fantasizing. About your early days, about strangers, about versions of you that feel lost. Monogamy's real work isn't fidelity of body, but of attention. Will you nourish the real or worship the imaginary? Jung's answer: the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. Your fantasies are your children begging you not to burden them with your unlived life. So let them go, not with guilt, but grace. They were messengers, not enemies. The stranger's pull wasn't a threat, it was an invitation. To dig, to reclaim, to choose your partner anew, not from duty, but from the wholeness you finally dared embody. If this truth lands, act. Not tomorrow, now. Turn to your partner, see them truly, not as the villain of your fantasies, but as the fellow traveler in your shared becoming. Then watch, astonished, as the strangers fade, and the love you've mythologized others to fill ignites raw, real, and finally yours. And if these words stirred something primal, act again. Smash that like button. Drop a comment raw enough to crack screens. Subscribe not for more answers, but for more questions that gut you alive. Every click isn't vanity. It's a flare gun shot into the night, guiding others lost in the same labyrinth. The strangers can rot on their pedestals. Your wholeness? It's been waiting since the first lie you swallowed.